The wind screamed across the mountains like a living beast, tearing at the old tent as if it wanted to rip it away. The fire inside burned weakly, its light flickering across the rough ground. A human soldier sat close to the flames, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion after the long day of wandering through this hostile world. His face was calm, but his ears stayed sharp, listening to every sound outside. On planets like this, silence was never safe. Beside him sat the alien girl, her small frame wrapped in a thin blanket. Her skin glowed faintly in the firelight, a soft shimmer that marked her as something not from Earth. She hugged her knees and looked at the flames, but her eyes kept drifting to the tent flap. Each gust of wind made her jump slightly, as if she expected something far worse than the storm. To crawl inside, the human noticed. He had seen soldiers shaken by fear, but this was different. Her body trembled, yet it was not the cold. Her eyes, bright and strange, carried something he could not name. Finally, her voice broke the silence. Can I sleep close to you?" she asked. Her words were simple, but her tone was heavy. It was not the request of a frightened child wanting warmth. No, there was something hidden in it, something he could not ignore. The human looked at her carefully. "You're cold?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, not cold," she whispered, her gaze falling to the fire. Outside, the storm roared. Louder, branches snapped, rocks shifted. Something large moved beyond the shadows. Or maybe it was just the wind, he wasn't sure. He reached for the blade at his side, his instincts sharp. The girl saw his hand tighten on the weapon, and she pressed the blanket tighter around herself. The fire crackled weakly, throwing long shadows on the tent walls. The girl leaned closer, almost pressing against him. Her glowing eyes lifted to his, and in them he saw not only fear but a warning. She wanted to be near him, yes, but not only because of the storm. It was something else, something far heavier. "You're hiding something," the human said softly. Her lips parted as if to answer, but she stopped. Her eyes dropped again, her throat working as if she swallowed down her words. The human didn't push her. He had learned in war that truth always came. In time, whether people wanted it or not. Instead, he listened to her breathing, quick and shallow, to the storm outside. Wild and alive. Another sound rose beyond the storm, a faint crunch, like footsteps in the snow. The human's head snapped toward the tent flap. The alien girl's hand shot out, gripping his arm tight. "Don't go," she whispered, her voice sharp with fear. The human froze. There was no reaction to wind or rockfall. That was terror of something she already knew was out there. He studied her face. Her lips trembled. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Yet she stayed close, clutching him like he was the only shield. She had left. The storm outside raged on, but in that moment, the human understood one thing: this night was not just about weather, not just about survival against the cold. Something else was hunting her, something that made even the storm feel safer than the truth outside. The fire flickered lower. Shadows thickened around them. The alien girl pressed against him and closed her eyes as if willing the night to pass. But her body never relaxed. Every muscle stayed tense, ready to flee, ready to break. The human soldier stayed awake. One hand on his weapon, the other resting near the fire. His gaze stayed fixed on the entrance of the tent. He did not know what was coming or why the girl's eyes looked so haunted, but he knew one thing with certainty. Tonight, fear was not born from the storm, it was born from the secret she carried, and the danger that followed her through the dark. And so, the night of fear began. The storm outside showed no sign of stopping. Wind whipped across the hills, carrying with it the cry of broken trees and shifting rocks. The human soldier sat silently by the fire, his blade resting across his knees. His eyes were sharp, fixed on the weak glow of the tent walls. He had fought many battles in his life, but what unsettled him tonight was not the storm, it was the alien girl sitting close to him, clutching her blanket as though it were her last shield. She had asked to sleep near him, and he had agreed. Yet he could not ignore the weight in her gaze. Her lips spoke of needing warmth, but her eyes told a different story, one filled with fear, one filled with shadows she dared not share. Every few moments, she turned her head to the tent flap. Her eyes flashed with worry at the slightest sound, whether it was the storm or the shifting of the ground. She did not relax, not even for a breath. The human studied her closely. She looked fragile, her body trembling under the thin fabric. Yet the trembling did not come from the cold. No, he could see it clearly, now it was dread. Something out there had marked her, and it was only a matter of time before it showed itself. He finally broke the silence. "You're not afraid of the storm," he said. His voice was calm, but there was steel hidden inside. "You're afraid of something else? Tell me." The girl's head lowered. Her long hair, damp from the mist that slipped inside, fell over her face. For a moment, he thought she would answer. But then she shook her head. "No," she whispered. I cannot." Her words made the human's jaw tighten. He hated secrets, especially in nights like this when danger was close. Yet he did not force her. Soldiers learn patience, and patience often saves lives. The fire cracked, sending a small burst of sparks into the air. For a brief second, the girl's eyes caught the light, glowing with a soft shimmer that seemed almost too human, too vulnerable. But then the shimmer turned hard, like glass hiding something behind it. Outside, the storm gave a loud howl, and the ground trembled under heavy weight. The human snapped his head toward the sound. His hand reached for the weapon again. But before he could move, the girl grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into his sleeve. "Don't," she whispered sharply. Her breath came fast, as if each inhale cut her from inside. The human narrowed his eyes. "You know what it is?" She said nothing, but her silence screamed louder than any confession. For a long moment, only the storm filled the night. The human could almost hear his own heartbeat, steady and strong, while the girl's chest rose and fell in quick bursts. Her body leaned toward him as if his presence was the only barrier between her and whatever lived in the darkness outside. The soldier thought back to the way she had begged to sleep close. He had assumed it was comfort, a need for warmth in the freezing night. But now, looking into her trembling eyes, he understood it was something more. She was not just asking for safety, she was asking for protection from something that hunted her. The shadows on the tent wall moved with the firelight, long and thin, stretching like claws reaching inside. The girl's eyes followed those shapes, and he noticed the way her hand twitched, as though ready to flee at any moment. "You can't keep secrets forever," the soldier said quietly. "If you want me to fight for you, I need to know the truth." Her eyes filled with tears at his words, but she bit her lip hard, as if to lock her voice away. She only shook her head again. That answer told him more than words could. She was trapped, not by him, not by the storm, but by something far larger, something that chased her even into the safety of this small tent. The human leaned back slightly, his hand never leaving the blade. He had fought enemies who were stronger, faster, and crueler than him, but fear had always been the same. And in the alien girl's eyes, he saw the same shadows he had seen in soldiers who had watched death approach. The storm howled again. Somewhere, far off, a faint growl slipped between the winds, low and heavy. The girl flinched at the sound, and for the first time, her lips moved without her control. "They're here," she whispered, almost too soft for him to hear. The human's heart hardened. So, she did know. And whatever they were, they had finally caught up to her. He turned his head, staring at the tent flap, his jaw set like stone. The girl clutched his arm tighter, her body shaking against him. The fire dimmed. Shadows thickened, and the night pressed in close. But inside the tent, the human's eyes never left the entrance. He did not yet know the full truth, but he knew. Enough. Something dangerous was coming for her and now, for him too. And still, she would not speak the whole truth. Her words stayed locked, but her eyes, they told everything. The shadows in her eyes were warnings, and he knew the night had only just begun. The fire burned lower, its weak glow barely holding back the dark. Smoke drifted upward, mixing with the damp air that slipped through the thin walls of the tent. The human soldier sat still, his blade resting across his knees, his senses sharp. He had faced many nights like this. But something about this one felt heavier, like the air itself carried a warning. The alien girl stayed close to him, wrapped tightly in her blanket. Her breathing was shallow, her glowing eyes fixed on the shadows. Every time the wind shifted, every time a branch cracked outside, she tensed. It was not the storm she feared. It was something else, something alive, waiting out there. The soldier. Notice the way her gaze lingered on the entrance of the tent. It was not random for it, was focus. She knew exactly where the danger was coming from. Then a sound broke through the storm. A soft crunch. Snow shifting under weight. Not the storm, not the trees. This was something moving, something careful. The human's body stiffened. Slowly he raised his head, listening. Another crunch, closer this time. Then silence. The girl gripped his sleeve, her fingers trembling. "Don't go out," she whispered, almost begging. Her voice was sharp, filled with fear that made her sound older than her years. The human did not reply. His eyes narrowed. He knew what stalkers sounded like, and this was no storm. Minutes passed, stretched long and heavy. The fire flickered, throwing strange shapes across the walls. One shadow stretched longer than the others, lingering as if it did not belong to the fire at all. The soldier's grip tightened on his blade. His heart stayed steady, but his mind sharpened like steel. Outside, the storm screamed, but beneath it, another sound whispered. A faint breath, a presence waiting. The girl pressed closer to him, her eyes wide, glowing faintly in the dark. "It's them," she said, her voice shaking. "They found me." The soldier finally spoke, his tone calm and firm. "Who?" She bit her lip hard, refusing to answer. But her silence was enough. Whoever they were close, and they wanted her. Another sound came, a low growl, distant but clear. Not a beast's call. Something controlled, something hunting. The soldier shifted, keeping himself between the girl and the tent entrance. He did not know what was waiting outside, but he knew it was watching. Watching them both, time dragged. On the storm raged, but the watcher did not leave. The soldier could feel it the way an old fighter feels eyes on his back before a strike. He knew patience was a weapon, and whoever was outside had mastered it. The girl buried her face against his arm, trembling harder. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They'll wait all night if they have to." The human frowned. "Then let them wait," he said, his voice low. "I'll be ready." Her eyes lifted to his, glowing with fear and something else, something almost like hope. But she said nothing more. Hours passed slowly. The fire burned down to embers, the tent growing colder. Still, the soldier did not move. His gaze stayed fixed on the entrance, his blade steady in his hand. He would not give the watcher the chance it was waiting for. And yet, the silence itself became a weapon. Each moment of stillness pressed heavier, each shadow darker. The girl's fear fed the night, and the soldier could feel it. Whoever was outside wanted that fear, wanted her weak, broken, ready to be taken. But she was not alone. The soldier leaned slightly forward, his eyes sharp, his voice steady. "Listen to me," he said to her. "As long as I breathe, they won't touch you." Her lips trembled, and for the first time, tears slipped down her cheeks. She wanted to believe him, yet her eyes still held the shadow of doubt. She had lived too long, hunted to trust words easily. Another sound came from outside, louder this time. A scrape like claws across stone, then silence again. The watcher was moving, circling, testing. The human's grip on his weapon tightened. He did not rise, not yet. To move first was to show fear. No, he would wait until the watcher revealed itself. The girl shivered, her body pressed against him for warmth and safety. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You don't understand. Not just hunting me, they'll kill you too." The soldier's eyes stayed fixed on the shadows. His tone was cold, unshaken. "Let them try." The storm thundered outside, but it was nothing compared to the silence that followed. A silence filled with the weight of unseen eyes. A silence heavy with danger waiting to strike. Inside the tent, two figures sat close by a dying fire, one trembling, one steady dot, and outside, in the storm, the silent watcher waited. The night grew heavier as the fire inside the tent sank into dying embers. Smoke curled in thin lines, and the warmth slowly faded. Yet the human soldier did not move from his place. His blade rested in his hand, his body ready, his eyes never leaving the tent's entrance. He knew something was out there, and patience was its weapon. Beside him, the alien girl stayed pressed close, trembling under her thin blanket. Her eyes glowing faintly in the dark, never looked away from the tent flap. She was not waiting for sleep, she was waiting for the moment fear would turn into terror. The soldier finally broke the silence. His voice was steady, sharp, and low. "Tell me the truth. What's out there?" The girl froze, her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, her eyes filled with tears, her body shaking harder. "You know," the human pressed. "You've known all along. Why are they after you?" Her hands tightened around the blanket until her knuckles turned pale. For a moment, she tried to stay silent, to bury her fear where no one could see. But the soldier's gaze was unrelenting. He had seen fear before, and he knew when it hid something deeper. At last, she whispered, "They are my people." The words cut through the air like a blade. The soldier frowned. "Your people?" She nodded weakly, her eyes glistening with tears. "Yes, my own kind. They hunt me. I am not safe with them. I am not safe anywhere." The soldier's jaw tightened. He had expected monsters, raiders, even predators. But not this. Not her own people. "Why?" he asked firmly. "Why would they hunt you?" Her voice cracked. "Because I left them. Because I refused to follow their command. I was chosen for something I did not want. And when I resisted, they marked me as broken, useless, dangerous to their law. Now they chase me, to silence me, to erase me." The fire snapped softly, casting shadows across her tear-streaked face. She lifted her gaze to him, desperate, fragile. "That is why I asked to stay close to you. Not for warmth, not for comfort. For survival. If they find me alone, I die." The human soldier studied her silently. His eyes, dark and steady, met hers. He did not doubt her words. Fear like hers could not be faked. Outside, storm raged, but it felt quieter than the confession she had just given. Her voice trembled as she continued. "You don't understand. They will not stop. They will fight until I am gone. And you, if you stand in their way, they will kill you too." For the first time, the soldier's expression softened. He turned slightly toward her, his hand steady as he placed it gently on her shoulder. "Then let them come," he said. "I've faced worse." Her breath caught. She stared at him, shocked by the calm in his tone. She had expected fear, hesitation, maybe even rejection. Instead, she found steel. "But why?" she whispered. "Why risk your life for me?" The soldier looked at her, his face unreadable. "Because I don't leave people to die. Not to storms. Not to monsters. And not to their own kind." The girl's lips trembled, her tears spilling freely now. For so long she had carried the weight of being unwanted, hunted, betrayed by her own people. And now, sitting beside this human, she felt something she had not known in years, safety. Yet even as hope flickered inside her, the fear did not fade. She shook her head weakly. "You don't understand their strength. They will not face you. In the open, they will strike in shadows. They will make you bleed until you can no longer protect me." The human's grip on his blade tightened. "Then I'll bleed standing." The girl pressed her face into her hands, her sobs muffled. For the first time, she allowed herself to show how broken she felt. The storm outside howled louder, as if answering her pain. Then came the sound again, footsteps in the snow. Closer this time. The silent watcher was not just waiting, it was circling. Testing, preparing. The soldier's eyes sharpened. He shifted his stance, moving slightly in front of her, his body a shield between the danger outside and the girl. "You stay behind me," he said. His tone left no room for argument. She clutched his arm, her eyes wide, glowing in the dim firelight. "You'll die," she whispered. The human gave her a faint, grim smile. "Not tonight." Outside, the growl returned low, guttural, and filled with hunger. The shadows around the tent stretched long as if something massive moved in the storm. The girl buried her face against him, whispering words half in fear, half in prayer. The soldier remained still, his blade gleaming faintly in the dim light. His gaze fixed on the tent flap. He did not know how many of them were out there, or how strong they were. But now he knew why they hunted her. Now he understood her fear. And with that truth, the night grew heavier, because survival was no longer about the storm. 'Twas about facing enemies who once called her one of their own, and they were getting closer. The storm outside had not calmed. It raged with fury, tearing at the land as if the planet itself wanted to swallow them whole. Yet the human soldier knew the storm was no longer the greatest danger. What waited beyond the tent was far worse. The alien girl sat close to him, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. She had told him the truth. At last her people were hunting her. The same voices that once called her kin now sought her death. The human soldier felt her grip on his sleeve tighten with each sound outside. Heavy steps pressed into the snow. Branches snapped under weight. Strange voices rose and fell, harsh and guttural, echoing through the storm. "They're calling my name," she whispered, her voice shaking. The soldier listened. At first the wind drowned everything, but then he heard its shouts in a language he did not understand. The tone, however, was clear. It was the tone of hunters searching for prey. The girl's tears shimmered in the dim light. "If they find me here, they will kill you for protecting me." The soldier's grip on his weapon tightened, his jaw set like stone. "Then they'll have to try." A shadow passed across the tent wall, tall and sharp. Another followed. More than one. They were surrounding the shelter. The girl pressed against him, trembling. They won't stop until she could not finish. A deep growl cut through the storm. Then came the scrape of claws against the ground. The soldier rose too, his feet standing tall, even as the wind shook the tent. He positioned himself in front of her, blade gleaming faintly in the dying firelight. His voice was calm but unyielding. "Stay behind me." The girl's breathing quickened. She wanted to protest, but her words stuck in her throat. Then, without warning, the attack began. The tent shuddered violently as something massive slammed into its side. The fabric tore with a sharp rip, and cold wind rushed inside. The fire sputtered, nearly dying, leaving the space in near darkness. The soldier moved fast, shoving the girl back toward the corner and stepping forward with his weapon ready. Through the torn flap, he saw them. Figures in the storm. Their shapes were humanoid but taller, broader, wrapped in armor that gleamed faintly under flashes of lightning. Their eyes burned like coals in the dark, fixed not on him, but on the girl. They hissed in their alien tongue, and one raised a long weapon that looked like both a spear and a blade. The soldier did not wait. With a sharp swing, he slashed downward, cutting the weapon aside before it could strike. Sparks flew as metal clashed. The girl screamed, her voice lost in the storm. As more shadows pushed closer, the soldier's heart pounded, but his mind stayed clear. He had fought many enemies, but these hunters moved with deadly precision. They were not beasts driven by hunger. They were warriors sent to kill. The first attacker lunged again, but the human sidestepped, striking hard with his blade. The figure fell back, howling in rage. Another came from the side, clawed hands reaching through the torn tent. The soldier swung low, cutting across its arm, forcing it to retreat. The girl pressed herself against the corner, covering her mouth to keep from crying out. Tears streaked down her cheeks, her body shaking as she watched the man fight for her life. "You can't stop them," she cried. "There are too many." The soldier did not look back. His voice was sharp, strong, unbroken. "Then I'll cut down as many as I must." Outside, more figures appeared. Their shadows stretched long against the lightning. Their growls and shouts rose higher, a chorus of rage. The storm thundered as if the planet itself wanted to drown. The sound of battle. But nothing could silence the clash of steel. The human soldier struck again, his blade flashing in the dark. His body moved with the precision of years of training, every strike strong, every step calculated. He fought not for himself, but for the girl behind him. One of the attackers thrust forward, its blade grazing his arm. Blood spilled, hot against the cold wind. The girl gasped in horror, but the soldier did not falter. Pain only hardened his resolve. He pushed forward, his strike forcing the enemy back into the snow. Another shadow tried to rush in, but he turned swiftly, cutting low across its legs. Still, they kept coming. The girl's cries grew softer, choked with fear. She pressed her hands over her ears, but her glowing eyes never looked away from him. She had thought no one would ever stand for her again. Yet here was a human, bleeding and unbroken. Refusing to leave her, lightning split the sky, illuminating the battlefield outside. For a brief moment, she saw them all 5, maybe 6, circling, waiting for their chance to strike. Her heart broke. She whispered, her voice barely carrying over the storm, "He'll die for me." But the soldier did not think of death. He thought only of the blade in his hand, the fire in his chest, and the promise he had made. The storm screamed. The hunters closed in, and the human stood tall, ready to face them all. The attack had begun, and there was no turning back. Asterisk. The tent could not hold. With one final crash, the fabric tore wide open, the storm rushing in with icy claws. The fire died instantly, leaving only the flashes of lightning to light the chaos. Snow swirled inside, sharp as knives against the skin. The alien girl cried out, shielding her face, while the human soldier stood firm, blade raised, eyes hard. The hunters stepped fully into view now. 6 figures surrounded the broken shelter. Their armor was dark and heavy. Their weapons, long and cruel, their glowing eyes locked on the girl. They spoke in harsh tones, their voices carrying above the wind, words filled with venom. She understood every syllable, and the weight of it crushed her. They were not calling her by name anymore. They were calling her prey. The human soldier did not understand the language, but he understood intent. Their eyes said everything. They did not want him. They wanted her. The first one lunged. The soldier met the strike with steel, sparks flying as blades clashed. He pushed back with strength that surprised even the alien hunters, forcing the attacker into the snow. Another came from his side, swinging wide. The soldier ducked low, driving his shoulder into the enemy's chest before slashing across its arm. A howl tore through the storm as blood spilled onto the snow. The girl pressed against the ground, her body shaking. She wanted to scream for him to stop, to run, to leave her and save himself, but her voice would not come. She could only watch as the human fought alone against the shadows of her past. Lightning cracked overhead, revealing the fury in the soldier's face. His movements were sharp, controlled, each strike born of years of war. Yet he was only one man, and the hunters were many. One blade cut across his shoulder, red soaking his coat. Another strike grazed his leg, slowing him. Pain surged through his body, but his eyes never dimmed. He gritted his teeth, lifted his weapon again, and pressed forward. The hunters circled him, their growls rising louder. They wanted to break him slowly, to drown him in blood before taking the girl. But the soldier gave them no chance. He struck with fury, driving two of them back, his blade flashing in the stormlight. The girl's heart ached as she saw blood dripping from his wounds, his breaths growing heavier. She could not bear it. Crawling forward, she shouted through tears, "Stop, please, they'll kill you. You can't fight them all." But the soldier did not stop. He turned slightly, his voice sharp, strong, unbroken. "Stay down. I said, I'll protect you." His words struck her harder than the storm. In her world, no one had ever spoken like that, not even her own people. She had been abandoned, hunted, left to die. Yet here was a human, bleeding in the snow, standing for her without hesitation. One of the hunters roared and charged again. The soldier spun, meeting the strike midair. His blade cut across the enemy's chest, sending it crashing to the ground. Another shadow leaped from behind, but the soldier dropped low, rolling across the snow, rising to slash upward with deadly precision. But his strength was fading. Each wound bled more, each breath came shorter. The storm raged harder, ice whipping against his face, but he did not falter. His eyes stayed locked on the attackers. The girl's tears streamed freely. She pressed her hands to the ground, her voice breaking. "Why? Why fight for me?" He glanced at her for only a heartbeat, his voice steady, even as blood dripped from his side. "Because you're not theirs anymore. You're under my watch now." The hunters growled in rage, their voices thundering in their alien tongue. To them, his defiance was insult. They raised their weapons together, preparing to strike. As one, the soldier tightened his grip. He knew this was the moment. Either he stood, or they would both fall. Lightning ripped across the sky, turning night into day for a split second. In that flash, the human moved, charging forward into their formation. His blade clashed with theirs, sparks and blood mixing. In the storm, the fight became a storm within a storm. Shouts, cries. Steel against steel. The snow turned red beneath their feet. The girl screamed his name, though he had never told it to her. Her voice filled with desperation. She could not watch him fall. She could not lose the only being who had ever chosen to protect her. The soldier fought like a man possessed, his body screaming in pain. His mind locked on one single thought. She must live. Finally, with one brutal strike, he drove the last attacker back into the snow. The hunters hesitated, growling, circling again. They had not expected him to stand this long. The human stood bleeding, shaking, his blade dripping red. His chest heaved, but his eyes burned with fire. He raised his weapon, pointing it at them through the storm. His voice was hoarse, but unyielding. "If you want her, you go through me." The girl crawled forward, clutching his arm, her tears falling hot on his cold skin. "Please, don't die for me." But his eyes never left the enemy. "If I fall, it won't be for nothing. It will be for you." The storm howled, the hunters growled, and the human stood his ground. The battle in the storm was far from over. The storm raged as if the sky itself wanted to crush the world. Snow and ice slammed into the ground, lightning split the darkness, and the torn tent lay scattered like broken wings across the white earth. The human soldier stood bleeding, his chest rising and falling heavily, his blade trembling in his hand but never dropping. The alien hunters circled him, their glowing eyes burning through the storm. They growled in their strange tongue, their voices filled with rage and hunger. Yet, for the first time, there was hesitation in their steps. They had seen his strength. They had tasted his fury. And though blood poured from his wounds, he had not fallen behind him. The alien girl clutched the frozen ground, her tears mixing with the snow. Her heart ached with every cut on his body, every labored breath he drew. She had begged him to let her die alone, to spare himself from her curse. But he refused. He stood between her and death itself. One of the hunters roared and rushed forward, swinging its massive blade. The soldier met the strike with his own, sparks bursting as steel clashed. The weight of the blow drove him back, his boots sinking deep into the snow. But he did not fall. With a cry of defiance, he pushed forward, slashing across the enemy's chest. The hunter staggered, howling, before collapsing into the storm. The others growled louder, their fury boiling, but their eyes flickered with unease. This human should have died long ago. Instead, he fought like fire, refusing to be drowned. The girl crawled closer, her trembling hands reaching for him. "Please, stop," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You'll die for me. I don't want that." The soldier's eyes stayed locked on the enemy's, but his words carried back to her. "I told you, as long as I stand, they won't touch you." The hunters moved again, to striking from the sides. The soldier turned swiftly, his blade flashing in the stormlight. He blocked one, his arm shaking with effort, then drove his knee into the other before slashing upward. Pain surged through his body as another weapon grazed his ribs, blood spraying across the snow. He staggered, his vision blurring for a heartbeat, but his will kept him upright. He had bled before, he had suffered before, but he had never abandoned those who trusted him. The girl screamed his name, her voice raw with desperation. She could not watch him fall. She pressed her hands into the snow, her eyes glowing brighter with every tear. "Why?" she cried. "Why fight for me when no one else would?" For the first time, the soldier glanced back at her. His face was pale, his lips stained with blood, but his eyes held no fear. "Only resolve, because your life matters," he said firmly, "and I won't let them take it." Her heart broke at those words. No one from her world had ever spoken them. To her people, she had been a tool, a burden, a mistake. But to this human bleeding, fighting, refusing to leave, she was someone worth saving. The hunters roared in unison, preparing to strike again. The soldier lifted his blade one more time, his body screaming in pain, but his spirit unbroken. Then, lightning split the sky, and in that brief flash, the girl saw his eyes, tired but fierce, wounded but alive. And in that moment, she understood what her own eyes had been hiding all along. It was not only fear she carried, it was something deeper, something she had been too afraid to admit. She crawled to him, pressing herself against his back as he stood tall against the hunters. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. I asked to sleep close because I needed safety. But my eyes told the truth. I didn't want safety. I wanted you. The soldier froze for a heartbeat, her words striking deeper than any blade. He had known she was hiding something, but he had not expected this. The hunters howled and rushed forward, but the girl did not move away. She pressed closer, her arms wrapping around him from behind. Her glowing eyes met the storm, her voice rising in defiance. You will not take him. You will not take us. Something shifted then. Oh. Hunters paused, their rage clashing with sudden doubt. The bond between human and alien girl was not weakness, was strength, unyielding and fierce. The soldier, fueled by her words, lifted his blade once more. With a roar that cut through the storm, he charged forward. The clash was brutal, his strikes filled with everything he had left. The hunter stumbled, unprepared for the fury of a human fighting not for himself, but for someone he refused to lose. One by one, they fell back, retreating into the storm. Their growls faded, their shadows disappeared into the blinding snow. Silence returned, broken only by the wind. The soldier dropped to his knees, his blade falling into the snow. Blood stained his coat, his breath heavy and uneven. The girl caught him, her arms wrapping around him tightly. Her tears fell onto his skin, hot against the cold. She whispered into his ear, her voice shaking but full of truth. I don't just want to live close to you. I want to stay with you. Always. The human looked at her, his tired eyes softening. He gave a faint, broken smile. Then live. That's all I ask. The storm raged on, but inside their embrace, there was warmth, there was truth. And there was something neither of them had expected: hope. Her eyes had finally spoken, and he had heard. The night of fear had ended. The night of truth had begun.